All right, friends. So today we are going to read both scenes 2 and scene 3. So this one's going to be a little bit longer than normal, but there won't be as many questions in between as usual because this video is going to be a little bit longer, okay? So happy Tuesday. Today we're going to go through scenes 2 and 3. Tomorrow we're going to go through scene 4. For Thursday we're going to go through scene 5, and that will end Act 1. You do not have class on Friday, so that's kind of cool. But we are going to finish up Act 1 this week. All right, so where we last left off, we left off where Romeo was being the dramatic man that he is, and basically just saying, like, I'm so torn up about this, and you all made an awesome playlist yesterday that I'm actually going to share out. But that was really cool. But he's going through a breakup, right? And so this is the next scene, which has to do with our friends Capulet and Paris. So Capulet is Juliet's family, okay? And then Paris is the guy who Capulet's family wants her to marry. All right, so remember, arranged marriages back then was a thing. And so in this scene, in conversation with Capulet, Paris declares his wish to marry Juliet. Capulet invites him to a party that night. Capulet gives a servant a guest list for the party and orders him off to issue invitations. The servant cannot read the list and asks for help from Romeo and Benvolio, and when they find out that Rosaline, on whom Romeo dotes, is invited to the party, they decide to go too. So that's what's going to happen in scene 2, all right? So in comes Capulet, Paris, and a serving man. But Montague is bound as well as I, in penalty alike, and 'tis not hard, I think, for men so old as we, to keep the peace. So he's like, listen, us old guys, we'll be able to keep it together. Because remember, the Capulets and the Montagues hate each other. And then Paris, remember, who's trying to marry Juliet, says, of honorable reckoning are you both, and pity 'tis you lived at odds so long. But now, my lord, what say you to my suit? A suit is like my like what do you have to say about my wish, my desire? But saying over what I have said before, my child is yet a stranger to the world. She hath not seen the change of 14 years. Let 2 more summers wither in their pride. Here we may think her ripe to be a bride. Okay? I'm going to stop really quick, and I want you to interpret what Capulet just said. But saying over what I have said before, my child is yet a stranger in the world. She hath not seen the change of 14 years. Let 2 more summers wither in their pride. Here we may think her ripe to be a bride. Okay, go ahead, answer that question. What does that little paragraph mean? So there, Capulet is saying, like, dude, she hasn't even turned 14 yet. We got to give her a little bit of time to experience the world before we marry her off. And Paris says, younger than she are happy mothers made, right? So she's like, but he's like, even younger have been married before. And then Capulet goes on a speech. And too soon married are those so early made. Earth hath swallowed all my hopes, but she's the hopeful lady of my earth. But woo her, gentle Paris, get her heart. May will to her consent is but a part. And she agreed, within her scope of choice, lies my consent and fair according voice. This night I hold an old accustomed feast, whereto I have invited many a guest, such as I love, and you among the store. One more, most welcome, makes my number more. At my poor house look to behold this night earth-treading stars that make dark heaven light, such comfort as do lusty young men feel when well apparelled April on the heel of limping winter trends, even such delight among fresh fennel buds shall you see this night. Inherit at my house, here all see, and like her most, whose merit most shall be. which, on more view of many, mine being one, may stand in number, in reckoning none. Come go with me. Go, sirrah, trudge about, through fair Verona, and find those persons out, whose names are written there, and to them say, my house and welcome on their pleasure stay. So, if you haven't noticed, Capulet kind of talks like Dr. Seuss, okay? Most of his lines rhyme. And what he's saying is, Paris, listen, this girl, my daughter, Juliet, is my heart. I love her. I'm not going to just marry her off to anyone. So come to this party tonight and prove yourself to her. Make her love you, okay? And then he sends his serving man out to go give out invitations. But back then, poor people couldn't read, okay? And servants especially could not read. So it's going to be a little bit tough for the serving man to read the names that are written here. And so then he runs into two other people who do know how to read. So let's go through it. So serving man is on his own now, and he says, find them out whose names are written here. It is written in that the shoemaker should meddle with his yard, and the tailor with his last, and the fisher with his pencil, and the painter with his nets. But I am here to find those persons whose names are here writ, and I can never find what names the writing person has here writ. I must to the learned in good time. So then Benvolio and Romeo, two Montague people, enter. Tut, man, one fire burns out, another's burning, one pain is lessened by another's anguish. Turn giddy, and be helped by backward turning. One desperate grief cures with another's languish. Take thou some new infection to thy eye, and the rank poison of the old will die. Your plantain leaf is excellent for that. For what, I pray thee? For your broken shin. Why, Romeo, art thou mad? Not mad, but bound more than a madman is, shut up in prison, kept without my food, whipped and tormented, and good fellow. So Romeo is complaining that being lovesick is as bad as being in prison. So that's your Romeo update. The serving man comes up to them and says, God-given, good even. I pray, sir, can you read? And Romeo says, I, my own fortune and my misery. He's like, yeah, unfortunately. And the serving man says, perhaps you have learned it without book, but I pray, can you read anything you see? Hey, if I know these letters and the language. You say honestly, rest you merry, which is basically like a goodbye, thank you. Stay, fellow, I can read. And so he reads the people that are on the list. I want you to look at the list right now. Okay, so it's this part right here in italics. Why is this list so important to him? Go ahead and answer the question. All right, let's read the list. So who is invited to this party? Signor Martino and his wife and daughters, County Anselme and his beauteous sisters, the lady widow of Vitruvio, Signor Placentio and his lovely nieces, Mercutio and his brother Valentine, mine uncle Capulet, his wife and daughters, my fair niece Rosaline and Livia, Signor Valentino and his cousin Tybalt, Lucio and the lively Helena. A fair assembly. Whither should they come? Up. Whither? To supper? To our house. Whose house? My master's. Indeed, I should have asked thee that before. Now, I'll tell you without asking. My master is the great rich Capulet, and if you be not of the house of Montagues, I pray come and crush a cup of wine. Rest you merry. So he's like, hey, if you're not a Montague, why don't you just come to the party? You know where it's at. You know what time. It's all good. Come on over. Romeo is a Montague, but who is on that list? Rosaline, right? And just like any other broken up, heartfelt man, he's going to go try and win her back. Okay? And so Benvolio says, at this same ancient feast of Capulets sups the fair Rosaline, whom thou so loves, with all the admired beauties of Verona. Go thither, and with the unattained eye, compare her face with some that I shall show, and I will make thee think thy swan a crow. When the devout religion of my eye maintains such falsehood, then turn tears to fire, and these who, often drowned, could never die. Transparent heretics, be burnt for liars. One fairer than my love, the all-seeing sun never saw her match, since first the world begun. So he's basically saying, like, I am now so driven to do this. Like, she's beautiful. I need to go and find her and win her back. I am her love. And Benvolio says, Tut, you saw her fair, none else being by, herself poised with herself in either eye. But in that crystal scales let there be weighed your lady's love against some other maid, that I will show you shining at this feast, and she shall scant show well that now seems best. I'll go along, no such sight to be shown, but to rejoice in splendor of mine own. So Benvolio's like, dude, I have a feeling you're gonna meet someone. Like, you are going to meet someone new at this party that you are going to love. And Romeo's like, yeah, whatever, I'm gonna go get my Rosaline, okay? And then that scene is over. So we're going to move on to scene 3 now. So scene 3 is our first scene where Juliet comes into the fray, okay? So we haven't even met Juliet yet, but she is obviously the second main character, right? And we know that Romeo doesn't actually, like, win Rosaline back because he falls in love with someone else, right? Just as Benvolio predicted. So in scene 3, Lady Capulet informs Juliet of Paris's marriage proposal and praises him extravagantly. Juliet says that she has not even dreamed of marrying, but that she will consider Paris a possible husband if her parents wish her to. Okay? So that's what's going to happen in this upcoming scene. Lady Capulet, who is Juliet's mother, okay, and nurse, who, if you remember from the Who's Who guide from last week, Nurse is the one that cares for her. She's Juliet's best friend, okay? So Lady Capulet and Nurse are talking. Nurse, where's my daughter? Call her forth to me. Now, my maidenhead 12-year-old, I bade her come. What lamb, what ladybird, God forbid, where's this girl? What, Juliet? And then Juliet comes in. How now, who calls? Your mother. Madam, I am here. What's your will? This is the matter. Nurse, give leave a while. We must talk in secret. Nurse, come back again. I've remembered me. Thou hear our counsel. Thou knowest my daughters of pretty age. So Lady Capulet's like, Nurse, go away. Nurse, come back. Okay? And Nurse says, Faith, I can tell her age unto an hour. She's not 14. I'll lay 14 of my teeth, and yet to my teeth it shall be spoken, and I have but 4. She's not 14. How long is it now to Lammastide? And Lammastide is like Lammas Day, so it's like a holiday that they celebrated back in the 1600s. And so she's like, she's not even 14. I know her date. Of course I know her. And Nurse says, even or odd of all days in the year, come Lammas Eve at night shall she be 14. Susan and she, God rest all Christian souls, were of an age. Well, Susan is with God. She was too good for me. But as I said, on Lammas Eve at night shall she be 14. That she shall. Mary, I remember it well. 'Tis since an earthquake now 11 years, and she was weaned, I never shall forget it, of all the days of the year upon that day. For I had then laid wormwood to my dug, sitting in the sun under the dove-house wall. My lord and you were then at Mounta. Nay, I do bear a brain. But as I said, when it did taste the wormwood on the nipple of my dug and felt it bitter, pretty fool, to see it tetchy and fall out with the dug. Shake! Quoth the dove-house, 'twas no need, I trow, to bid me trudge. And since that time it is 11 years, for then she could stand high lone, nay, by the road. She could have run and waddled all about, for even the day before she broke her brow, and then my husband, God be with his soul, he was a merry man, took up the child. Yeah, quoth he, dost thou fall upon thy face? Thou wilt fall backwards, and when thou hast more wit. Wilt thou not jewel? And by my holidam, so pretty wretch left crying, and said, to see now how jest shall come about. I warrant, and I should live 1,000 years, I never should forget it. Wilt thou not jewel? Quoth he, and pretty fool, it stinted, and said, I. So that giant monologue right there, all of that was her remembering raising Juliet, okay? So the only importance there is that you understand that Nurse had been there for Juliet since the very day. Nurse had a daughter named Susan, and so she took care of both of them. Susan left with her father, and so now Nurse is just sad and lonely, and so that's why she focuses all of her attention on Juliet, okay? She's super loyal to Juliet. She loves Juliet like a daughter. She is everything to her, okay? And so Lady Capulet says, enough of this, I pray thee, hold thy peace. And Nurse says, yes, madam, yet I cannot choose but laugh to think that I should leave crying and say I, and yet I warrant I had it upon its brow, a bump as big as a young cockerel's stone, a perilous knock, and it cried bitterly. Yeah, quoth my husband, fall'st upon thy face, thou wilt fall backwards when thou comest to age. Wilt thou not jewel? And he stinted and said, I. Juliet said, I stint thou too, I pray thee, nurse, say I. Peace, I have done. God mark thee to his grace. Thou wast the prettiest babe that ever I nursed, and I must live to see thee married once. I have my wish. So Nurse is like, yeah, you know what? She needs to get married as soon as possible. And so Lady Capulet says, marry. That marry is the very theme I came to talk of. Tell me, daughter Juliet, how stands your disposition to be married? It's an honor that I dreamt not of. An honor? Were not I thine only nurse, I would say thou had sucked wisdom from thy teat. Lady Capulet says, well, think of marriage now. Younger than you, here in Verona, ladies of esteem, are made already mothers. By my count, I was your mother much upon these years that you are now a maid. Thus, then, in brief, these valiant Paris seeks you for his love. So he's like, Juliet, listen, or she's like, Juliet, listen, I was married at your age, so now it's up to you to get married. And so Nurse says, a man, young lady, such a man, as all the world, why, he's a man of wax, which is like a good thing, okay? And so then Capulet says, Verona's summer hath not such a flower. Nurse says, nay, he's a flower, in faith, a very flower. And so Capulet then talks to Juliet about this man. So she says, what you say, can you love the gentleman? This night you shall behold him at our feast. Read over the volume of young Paris's face, and find delight writ there with beauty's pen. Examine every married lineament, and see how one another lends content, and see what obscured in this fair volume lies, and find in the written margin of his eyes this precious book of love, this unbound lover, to beautify him only lacks a cover. The fish lives in the sea, and 'tis much pride, for fair without the fair within to hide. That book in many's eyes doth share the glory, that in gold clasps locks in the golden story. So shall you share all that he doth possess, by having him, making yourself no less. No less, nay, bigger. Women grow by men. Speak briefly. Can you like of Paris's love? I'll look to like, if looking liking move, but no more deep will I indart mine eye, than your consent gives strength to make it fly. And the serving man, who we met in the last scene, comes in and says, Madam, the guests are come, supper served up, you called, my young lady asked for, the nurse cursed in the pantry, and everything in extremity. I must hence to wait. I beseech you, follow straight. We follow thee. Juliet, the county stays. Go, girl, seek happy nights to happy days. Boom. End of scene 3. Okay? So I'm going to leave you with one last question. How does Juliet feel about getting married? Obviously, Lady Capulet, who's her mother, is really, really excited, right? Nurse is like, listen, you need a man to be a better woman. Her mom is saying, you gotta marry. I was married at this age. But how does Juliet feel about this? That's my last question for you today. Tomorrow, we will read scene 4. And then scene 5 is the party. It's a really famous party in literature itself. It's one of the most famous parties of all time. And it's because where Romeo maybe meets someone, okay? Let me know the answer to your question. How does Juliet feel about getting married? And I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.